Well, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. Thank you for joining us again. My name is Walt. I'm the host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chase. Dude, this is one of those episodes where I feel like people are going to really be able to get into the groove and feel like we're getting ready for deer season.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode a couple of times myself just to figure out all of the items that I'm going to need layering-wise to go out to Iowa this next season. So it's one of those podcasts that you may want to listen to a couple of different times just to get a system dialed in. If you're like me, you're from the South, you have a little bit of stuff, but you want to get more into that performance gear type stuff, this is the podcast for you.
It's a topic that I think a lot of people aren't accustomed to discussing, or they've written off because, you know, as an industry, we get like smacked with marketing for whatever's cool in the current time or whatever the new trending thing is. And I think sometimes we can get a little overwhelmed with what is being put out there in front of us, and sometimes we don't do a good enough job of stopping and breaking down the benefits. And that's what we're seeking to do here, guys. We're breaking down layering systems. We're talking to Locke, who's a member of the Skre team. I have used the Skre gear myself for the last year. In fact, I took it to Colorado, and I abused it. I went into that trip with the goal of, if my pant leg gets caught on a branch, I'm going to pull it off as hard as I can and see if I can pull the stitch or rip it. I didn't try to make this stuff last, and it blew my mind. And Chase, I think you'll remember, I came home like raving about how well this gear worked.
Yeah, you did. I remember you telling me about how great it was, and you compared it to some of the gear you had in the past, and you were kind of, like I said, blown away by how well it held up in those conditions, and then that's translated down here as well.
Yeah. Well, and you know what they don't have in Colorado is thorns,
right?
You know, and that's something we've got an abundance of. We've got more thorny briar patches than we've got deer to hide in, and I've been able to find like 3 pulled threads on my hardscribal pants. My merino top is flawless. Anybody who's ever talked to me about merino knows that I'm kind of a stickler for that. I kind of got some itchy skin, and also I believe that gear should be able to take a certain amount of abuse. I mean, obviously you can't neglect it, but if I'm walking to my deer stand, I shouldn't rip holes in my shirt, you know?
Yeah, no doubt.
True story.
Got to realize that whitetail hunters are going to be going through a multitude of different types of terrain and things like that. So I think they have that in mind when they're designing their gear, and that was kind of evident when Locke was talking about what Skre looks at when they're thinking about what does a hunter want and what type of system do we need to build to fit their needs.
Absolutely, for sure. And, you know, it's one of those things where I bought a lot of hunting camo in the past. None of it's held up very well. I bought a lot of outdoor hiking gear, and to Locke's credit, he mentions this in the early parts of this episode. Their company is born, what they're doing is born out of people out west who have proven the gear in this layering system process. And, I found like a lot of that Western hunting, non-hunting gear held up better than my hunting gear. And I was very skeptical to put money into some of these articles, but articles of clothing that Skre has put out. But having talked to Locke, having gone and put my hands on it at the Birmingham Deer Expo, I felt better about moving forward with that, and I'm glad I did, because this is an awesome dialogue. I know that Craig Crum heard the Skre episode that we first did. Well, it wasn't a Skre episode; it was just a deer hunting episode, but it happened to have Locke with Skre, and he went out and bought some. So Craig, shout out to you on this one, buddy. I know you're going to enjoy this one for sure. But if anybody's wondering who Craig is a Patreon subscriber. We have a small group of people who support this show financially, and if you're interested in doing so and you want to get entered into quarterly giveaways like this quarter, which include the Phantom saddle, backband, Hiss strap, all kinds of cool stuff, Versa straps, all kinds of stuff from Tethered. Tethered has hooked us up with gear to give away to you guys, and all you have to do is sign up to support the show. So check it out in the show notes. It's patreon.com/Chasing Tails Outdoors. We've got a Marco Polo group that we'll add you to. We talk to people about arrows, we talk to people about backpacks and DIY projects, and we have a really good time. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who helps support the show. Without you guys, we literally couldn't do this. So, Chase, why don't we just leave it right there, and we'll let him get right to the episode.
Let's do it. On to Mr. Locke
All
Wheeler.
right. All right, folks, we have got Locke Wheeler on the phone. Locke is a returning guest. I think this is like the third time we've had him on this year alone. Thank you for tolerating us for a third time, Locke.
Yeah, you're wearing out your welcome, Walter. What can I say? I don't
I'll add it to the list of places and people.
Well, it's a good time of the year. It's a good time of the year. Getting to talk about hunting and outdoors, and because that's basically what we're doing right now, is sitting around thinking about it or talking about it. So, hey, man, it's a good opportunity to dive off into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think
Scratch that itch.
I think the next time you come on, I'm gonna introduce you as our southeastern correspondent, because you're coming on so often. We got to give you some kind of a title, because
there we go. I've been called worse.
Oh man, well, we have officially left turkey season, and as a result, you are bored out of your mind. I think is what we were kind of discussing beforehand. It's the slowest of the slow seasons. There's not even sports for us to look at.
It is, and I mean, specifically in 2020, we don't even have live TV. Like, we don't have college baseball. We don't have Major League Baseball. We don't have NBA for those that follow basketball. We don't have anything. Like, it's terrible. And I'm one that I fish a little bit, and I grew up fishing a lot. My dad was a big-time bass fisherman, and my grandfather retired at a lake house. And so, I grew up fishing a lot, but now I really don't that much. So I've taken my kids, and I try to go down to the coast and inshore fish, a couple of times throughout the summer. But I'm not a huge fisherman. And so, yeah, I'm kind of like Little League Baseball, as much as that as we can do, and planting some summer food plots and trying. I guess that kind of brings to the surface. This is an opportunity I'm taking advantage of. I'm telling myself anyway, I'm going to be better prepared for October this year, because I'm getting out there and doing more of this summer prep work than probably I normally convince myself to do in the heat.
Yeah. Dude, I would follow international ping pong right now if I could just get it on ESPN. I mean, I'm struggling, but along the lines of being ready for October, when I first met you was at the Birmingham Deer Expo, almost a year ago now at this point, and one of the things we talked about was layering systems, and that's something that I think we have always said we were going to discuss at some point, and it's something that I have been introduced to recently, and specifically technical garments that do things that previous generations of clothes don't do, and that's going to be the foundation of this podcast. That's what we're going to target with this podcast, and I'm excited because I have seen a different. I'm not trying to sound like I'm groundbreaking here, but I personally have seen a different world of what performance outdoor wear can do. And I knew that you were plugged in with this. I knew you could speak eloquently to what we needed to here. So before we get into describing what people need to do, I think we need to have a discussion. You actually mentioned this, that we need to have a discussion to kind of set the foundation for why technical gear is different than past generations, because it's come a long way since cotton.
Yeah, and for the people that haven't heard any of the episodes that I've done previously with you guys, I guess my stake in this thing is I work for a company called Skre, and Skre is a company that is a competitor to your companies such as Sitka, First Light, QU, and what that is layering systems and performance hunting gear, performance apparel, and I think to your point, it's becoming a big topic in hunting, and you're starting to see it everywhere. Not only are you seeing companies such as Skre kind of rise up in the market, but you're even seeing a lot of your traditional outdoor gear companies are starting to offer some of this stuff. And I think it's important. It's an important question that a lot of people have as to what is this stuff? Like, why? And I would say the first thing that I would say is, you step back into this conversation a little bit, and you start by saying, and just understanding that hunting in general is a very personal thing. It's a personalized thing. I mean, whether it's your gear or it's your tactics, your methods, for how and why and where and when that you hunt, it's not really, there's not like set paths. There's not right and wrong answers.
Right.
We all kind of have our own motivations for why we do things. And whether that's about success or failure in terms of harvest, or whether that's about just enjoyment of our recreational time outdoors. So when we talk about the gear thing, there is no company that's going to offer one thing that is a fit. And I don't mean physically fit you. I mean a fit to your personal desires of what you want out of your gear in every way for every person. Because, you know, you meet one guy and they get really cold, and that's a big thing. Like, I can't enjoy deer hunting because most of the season I'm always freezing. And then you meet the next guy, and he's the exact opposite. You know, he's the guy that's out there hunting in a pair of pants and a cotton hoodie, and it's freezing cold, and he's sweating, you know. So there's such a wide spectrum there. And so I think the only way you can take it when you start to try to answer the question of why performance gear and why layering system. So the one thing that I think that has to be dispelled in that conversation to kind of get started is, you're not trying to convince people that they'll be a better hunter in terms of the pursuit of game. This gear is not going to make you invisible. This gear is not going to make you make better decisions when it comes to how you hunt or execute in the moment. Now, it might help you with your level of comfort and enjoyment and all of that kind of stuff, and that might assist you in executing all these other things. So, you know, unlike many gimmicky things that you see on the hunting market, this, you know, performance gear and layering is not something that's like intended to make 150-inch deer get in bow range instead of only 120-inch deer get in bow range, right? So, I mean, you can't look at it like that. But what you have to look at, given the stated fact that there's a wide range of likes and dislikes amongst different hunters, is there's a couple of things that I guess you would say are as close to universal as can be in this conversation. And those are things like comfort, things like durability, and things like that regardless of where you stand on the spectrum, or where you lie in the spectrum of what you like and dislike about your hunting gear, you know, nobody wants to be uncomfortable. I mean, I know there's some adventurous outdoor survivalists out there that might, but I'm talking about our average consumer hunter. Everybody wants to be comfortable. Everybody wants to have their gear last as long as it can and perform at a high level as long as it will last. And those are the kind of things that sort of become universal. And so that's where performance gear and layering systems, they kind of sit in the middle. And the word that you use there is versatility. So with performance and layering system gear, what you're doing is you're providing pieces that are very versatile. They can be used in a lot of different ways and perform in a lot of different ways. And they're made out of high quality fabric with a lot of innovation and design to fit a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And so instead of just kind of your typical cotton or fleece stuff that's just kind of it's just there, you know, it just is what it is, and it really has a black and white. Some people love it and other people hate it. I think that with performance gear and with layering system gear, what you're trying to do is provide versatile gear that is not only very well designed and very well made, but it does a lot of things for a lot of different people. So it kind of is a one-stop shop in the world of hunting gear.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for like the whole spectrum there of what the things I wanted to discuss, because I'm the dude that's wearing the hoodie and the short and the pants, and Chase is the guy that, you know, a cool breeze rolls in and he's out there in his bibs, you know. So it's one of those things where it has to be versatile in that regard. And I think, you know, I never was comfortable in coveralls. You know, when I first started everything, it was one of those situations where no matter how many layers I put on of insulating, I was either too warm or too hot, and there never seemed to be a way to manage that. Chase has been pursuing that a lot. You know, playing with different fabrics. I mean, am I speaking out of place for you, Chase?
No, I am definitely the person that is always freezing. I can remember several years ago going out to Kansas, and I had brought a little bit of performance gear, and then I had some of my other stuff too. And I think it was one morning, it was like 25 degrees, and I decided I'm going to hunt like on the edge of this pond. And there was wind blowing off this pond, and it was hitting me in the back of the neck. And I mean, I'm talking about I had a ton of layers on, and I was still freezing to the point where I sat there for maybe an hour, and then mentally I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get down and move and go somewhere else. And I'm like, I've got to find something that keeps me in the stand longer and when I go off places, because Florida, you never really have to worry about that. You're not going to be sitting in 25 degrees ever for hours and hours. But when I'm going to Iowa this next year, I've got 4 points and should draw for Zone 5. And I know it's going to be cold. I mean, unless it's just one of those odd years where it's kind of unseasonably warm. But shoot, I would be cold in 30 degrees. You know what I mean? So I need to find a system that is, like you said, it's performance, where I'm not like the marshmallow puff man or whatever out there, but it's still comfortable enough for me to sit in the stand those long, grinding days. Because I mean, it's Iowa. I need to be in the stand as long as I possibly can every day.
Well, that you know, back to what I said earlier. It seems like everything up until this point that hits the outdoor market, the outdoor industry, or the hunting market, there always seems to be some gimmicky sales pitch tied that is going to, it's, you know, more or less a magic trick against older deer or trophy deer or even numbers of deer. You know, it's always about that. Well, I mean, I think we all know once we experience it for a while and we hunt for a while that those kind of things typically are just what they are. They're just sales pitches, you know. But with the performance, that's where it's not the fabric. It's the idea that you can sit there and actually put in the hours to be successful. It's still up to you to pick the right stand spot. It's still up to you to execute the shot and all that kind of stuff. But the difference, and I mean, I can attest to this as well as any guest you'll have, just because of my hunting practices. When you go to Iowa or Kansas or Missouri or any of the Midwestern states and try to hunt that rut, you know, I mean, everybody gets lucky sometimes, but if you do it year after year, if you want to statistically be in the right spot, it's hours. You know, it's hours in the stand. And I know that's kind of applicable to everywhere, but up there it really is, because you're typically hunting a funnel or a bottleneck or some small patch of woods after the crops have been taken out. And if you sit there long enough and you hunt the wind correctly and you stay in the stand long enough and those deer are up cruising, they're going to walk past you. It's not like, you know, a WMA in the South where there's 5,000 acres of timber and they can kind of go anywhere, and it's kind of throw a dart at which path they may take any given day following any given doe. Up there, they're going to walk through that funnel at some point, and you got to be there, you know. And so that's kind of the I guess the sales pitch as it pertains to just simply converting hunting and gear and those kind of decisions, converting that into success of shots taken and harvest made, is when your gear works for you, it allows you to be a better hunter. All the rest of it is still up to you. You know, whether you use calls and scents and how you hunt the wind and where you choose to hunt and what kind of stand you hunt and whether you're prepared to execute, you know, whatever shot opportunity you may get, all that's still up to you. But if you're comfortable and you're dry and you're not just burdened with trying to figure this whole situation out of how I can stay in the stand and be there, then that's just one less thing that allows you to be a better hunter. And that's what it does.
Oh, yeah. And I think where this really comes into play is also, you know, if you're like me and you're a self-filmer, you've got enough frustrating things to deal with, right? And if it's
Absolutely.
halfway through the season, you're exhausted, you've been burning all kinds of brownie points, it's the rut, you're dealing with a dadgum base on the camera arm, and it's not right where it needs to be, and you just drop something from the tree. It's one of those things where it removes a friction point for me, and I've said that a lot, and that's kind of my theme going through this summer is trying to make my process smooth. Just to make tree stands light for the sake of it being light. If it makes my life more difficult, I'm not interested. I'd rather pay a little bit of a weight penalty to have something be smooth and that process be fluid for me, because I recognize that during the season, when I start getting out of the stand early, or when I start getting pissy and moving too much, and all of a sudden I bust a deer, it tends to revolve around the fact that I was frustrated about something, or I was wore out about something, and I feel like I've turned a corner with the garments that I've selected and put that piece together. Um, we've set the foundation for what it can do and what people's reasonable expectations should be. In the South, we've got a unique set of situations. Typically speaking, it's a warmer climate. Typically speaking, it's a more humid climate, especially if you're in Florida, Georgia, southern Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Um, I'm curious for you, how do you go about taking the technical garments that are out there and building a system that would remove some of those friction points for us, given that we kind of live in a really weird environment?
Yeah. So one of the things I this is just me, um, but I've seen it translate to a lot of people. One of the things that has become obvious to me is that we learn that we kind of wear clothing when we're using these kind of garments and stuff a little bit differently than we traditionally have. And so the number one example of that, and I guess the only really place to start with this is when we start talking about merino. And everybody that's read or listened to a podcast or dove off into this topic at all has heard about merino wool. It is the kind of the foundation of performance fabrics. Everybody's using it. The higher quality wool, merino wool that you have, the the better performance rating that you're going to get out of the garment and all that. But what I mean by this changing your kind of perception of how you dress and what you wear is, with more traditional fabrics in the South, we're looking at what's the best way for me to wear clothes that handle the camouflage side of things, they handle the moving through the brush and the woods and everything, but don't burn me up, So it's always, there's no layering to it. It's kind of like, if my stuff's too light, it doesn't last. If it's too heavy, it's uncomfortable, and I can't wear more than one layer when it's warm, because then I'll certainly burn up. But you start to break down what the layering system does, and the best example, the starting point. I wear a 170 merino base layer, top and bottom, under everything, and that includes October the 1st. And that is, I'll be honest, with the exception that during late turkey season, if I'm getting out of the truck and I know that I'm walking a long ways, then I might not. I'll just wear something really, really light, because you're talking about 85, 90 degrees, and you're talking about walking around for 2 or 3 hours trying to find a berth, right? That's a little bit different. I can see if you're a guy who's hiking a long ways with a saddle or a climbing system, that might apply to you in the earlier hunts, early in September, early October. But even like for me, October the 1st, when it's 85 degrees and it's not cooling off, but maybe 78 at dusk, I wear a 170 merino against my skin, and I'll wear a really lightweight outer. Actually, my merino shirt is kind of just usually my t-shirt when it's that warm. But I put the merino against my skin because merino is a miracle fabric. It really is. And it breathes. And so our traditional way of thinking is, and I've had people ask me this since I've been in this world, and people that I've hunted with have been exposed to what I'm wearing, what I'm doing, and talking it. It's like, how in the world, why would you wear a base layer? It's 80 degrees outside. Well, this is, traditionally a base layer is insulation, right? And wool is insulation. But what happens if you cut all of the hair off of a furry animal, even in the summer? Their body can't regulate, right? So, like a sheep, for example. And the merino wool base layers, they do a lot. They're not just insulation. They wick away moisture, which makes you more calm. When you're sweating, they wick that moisture off of your body. It's antimicrobial, so it helps with scent control, and it keeps that moisture off of your body, and it absorbs 30% of its weight, so it actually keeps you cooler than just simply wearing one layer that's lighter weight. But that one layer is holding heat between it and your skin is constantly sweating. You're smelling worse and worse. You're chafing. You're uncomfortable, and you're sweating. Merino wool solves that. And like I said, it's one of those topics in this conversation that's probably one of the few that is able to be very universal, in that nobody wants to be sweaty and chafing and uncomfortable. Nobody wants that, regardless of where they stand in the spectrum. If you want that, then you need to go be on Naked and Afraid, not deer hunting. So like that's kind of what we're learning as just basically as deer hunters with layering and performance fabrics is the way that we wear these clothes is just very different than our kind of traditional method of wearing as little or as much as we can tolerate in order to try to regulate temperature. We're actually wearing them for a purpose. And it kind of, in some cases, like the example that I just gave, it kind of flies in the face of the traditional idea that, well, no matter what it is, if there's two layers of it, it's going to be hotter. Well, that's not the case with this. And, it's also not the case that I can't wear, but if I only wear that, I'm going to freeze to death. Well, then we can start to address that as well. But as far as for the South, like what you're talking about, I think it's pretty simple in that generally what you want to do is you want to breathe and you want to keep moisture off your skin. You want to do that when it's cold and you want to do that when it's hot. And that's what performance gear is intended to do. Now, how quality the gear you purchase is the quality of the fabric and all that kind of stuff, kind of makes a difference in how well it does what it is actually supposed to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you talk about, you did give that disclaimer or disclosure at the very beginning saying, or disclaimer, whatever, at the beginning saying, this isn't going to give you any advantage. One thing that miracle fabric I have found is I don't stink near as badly as I did when I was wearing Under Armour. We're talking multiples less stink. In fact, some of these garments I wear, I'm also dealing with ticks, and I spray them down with permethrin, and I can just let my wool hang and let it dry, and I can go several weeks worth of hunting and not have to wash it and, diminish that permethrin that's right on there.
That's the common thing that we end up, as the guys with Skre, and I'm sure you probably hear this from all the other companies too. Mm-hmm. If you go and approach these guys online or at an outdoor expo, and that's one of the common talking points. That's one of the, I guess, sales pitches is take one of our merino t-shirts and wear it hiking, wear it fishing, wear it checking trail cameras, wear it 2 or 3 times and just hang it up and let it just kind of air dry. Mm-hmm. And see, and then do the same thing with a regular T-shirt, and then smell the two after you've worn them 2 or 3 times in the summer. Yeah. And we don't have to convince you of that anymore after that, because it's that's what it is. And I guess I would be remiss not to mention for anyone who doesn't and hasn't actually put their hands on any of this stuff. I know that there could be a stigma when you hear the word wool, and people are like, hold on, dude, You're talking about wool, well, when we're talking about merino wool, think about a super soft ring spun cotton t-shirt. That's what it feels like. It's not your itchy kind of stiff fabric like traditional wool. This is a different. It comes from a merino sheep, but it is a sheep wool, but it's a different wool. It's the softest, most microfiber type of garment that you can buy. It's not at all like traditional,
No.
but it is wool.
So one of the things I hear when I'm talking to people about base layers is that I sweat too much and I get cold, even with wearing like the thinnest layer. How do you address the guys who hunt in the backcountry of Alabama, or they have to go a long distance? They're trying to wear that real thin layer. What is your suggestion to those people?
Well, so there's two approaches from the inside and then the outside as it pertains to layering systems for that specifically. And you also take a step back before we dive into this and consider that all of this stuff really has its roots in the backcountry. So if you compare the guys from way back when, all the way through the modern successful companies of today, the technology and the design and innovation comes from guys who are hiking up into the mountains and spending all day on the side of a ridge with cold wind blowing in their face and whatnot. So honestly, what they're doing in a lot of cases is, just simply walking a long ways to your deer stand kind of pales in comparison to what they're doing. So they've kind of got that covered. So the general idea that, those guys are backpacking, they don't know what no, it's very much a comparable thing. But on to the kind of the, your question is, so you approach it two ways. Number one, you wear the merino next to your skin. You wear the quality base layers. I mean, I'm going to recommend merino, obviously, but there are other quality hybrid multi-blend types of base layers that you'll find as well. But merino's the best. And what it does is merino is the best fabric that we have found in this gear industry at wicking moisture. So, as opposed to, I feel like I have to wear a base layer next to my skin because I have to have some insulation if I'm going to sit there and hunt all day. But that base layer, I've either got to pack it in, strip down, change clothes or something, because that base layer is just going to be a, tacky, moist mess by the time I get there from all of the sweating. This solves that. And so very, very plainly put, merino is the world's most efficient fabric at wicking and absorbing moisture. And when you wear it next to your skin, it wicks all the moisture off your skin. So if you do sweat, it's doing its job there. And then from the outside, what you're doing from a performance perspective is you're offering layers that are lighter weight and easier to pack and still work. Because we can all say that a 3-in-1 parka or something like that, some kind of traditional true cold weather jacket, even a midway jacket traditionally is not something that's really easy to find a way to pack in and out. You kind of almost have to wear it or hang it on something, right? What we're doing with performance gear is we're offering you a midweight jacket that is much lighter weight, that's much easier to pack in and out. It breathes better if you do choose to wear it, and if you don't, it just allows you to pack more stuff more efficiently so that you can pack in light and you can wear less layers and still stay warm because you're blocking the wind, you're insulating appropriately in combination with your merino and all that. So that's what you're looking at there. And I've said this to you, maybe I don't know, I don't remember if we talked about this specifically on the deer hunting podcast we did, but I've said it on other podcasts and stuff. I have found myself, and this is, I live in Louisiana, I'm from Mississippi, I hunt both states, and I travel and hunt a lot. I have found that what we deal with in the South is actually the most applicable environment and style of hunting for what layering does as anywhere in the country outside of, I guess, the backpacking world where this stuff was designed, because we have humidity that is very different. We have drastic change in temperatures. And a lot of times our access points and our the way we enter and exit and stuff like that, we move a lot, and we deal with a lot more range, and we deal with a lot more humidity. And I think that your question about the guy who's hunting in Alabama, that's it's 75 degrees when he leaves the porch at 1 p.m. and it's 40 degrees at dark, and it's not only 40 degrees, but it's humid.
Right.
It's a humid 40 degrees. I think the layering actually works a lot better. It's, I've hunted in the Midwest a lot, in the Midwest and other places like that, where, yes, they have some very challenging weather. It can get really cold. It can be really windy and all that. But, I can have a farmer drop me off, and I can walk just right down the edge of a fence row, maybe a long ways, but right down the edge of a fence row. And, I kind of get into where I'm going. The weather is, while it changes, it kind of sits longer, and you don't have as much of the humid, wet air that we have. And I like I said, the way this stuff works, I know exactly what you're asking because I grew up doing it. And, in Mississippi, when you got wet, humid air, and you got those days where it's summertime from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it's fall from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then it's dadgum winter from 4 to 6.
Yep.
There's just, there's not a lot you can do, and it sucks to be packing in some kind of heavy fleece jacket and trying to figure out how you're going to wear these base layers that you really need to have for the sit, but they're almost impossible for the walk, et cetera, et cetera. So, like I said, I think that the trick is we're trying to be very versatile and offer things that make a lot of sense that, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every piece that we sell or every piece that you find in a layering system is going to be just what you want. But most every piece you find is going to have a lot of uses outside of what traditional stuff is just kind of is what it is.
Transitioning from that next to skin layer, you've got a couple options for your insulative middle layer. You can put another layer of wool on, which is one of my personal favorites because it's not very bulky. I tend to move up to like a 250 gram like hoodie style deal. Puffy jackets are also an option. How do you go about making that decision, and what would you recommend for people?
So for Skre, what we do is we have a 170. Our next to skin lightweight merino is 170 gram, and our midweight is 300 gram. And our merino is 100% on the lightweight and 95% on the midweight, and 5% spandex in that 95 superfine. And we also offer a polyester blend style of base layer in the mid and in the lightweight. So I'm with you. I like to wear the merino every time I can, but I will say one thing, merino doesn't really do anything for direct contact on wind. It breathes. So a lot of times if I'm not moving very far and if I'm trying to layer for a colder sit without as much concern for the sweat and the getting hot getting in, then I like to use a polyester mid because to me it does better against the wind. If it's kind of windy and I'm not going too far and I want to be really warm, but my go-to most of the time is going to be the mid layer merino because it continues to wick everything, and that's always important. There's micro amounts of moisture on your skin that can make you very uncomfortable and can make you very cold. Even when you don't feel like you're sweating a whole bunch, it's still there. And it's very soft. I mean, it's like pajamas. It's the most comfortable stuff you can put on your body. So that's my go-to. But I mean, to give you kind of a better answer, there are times where I I like to have that polyester blend base because I feel like if it's windy, it's a better mid layer against wind. And wind is kind of that other thing that, I think everybody that's hunted very much knows the wind is the make or break in almost every situation. The wind can, you can sit. I'll give you an example. Last year, I'm hunting in northeast Kansas, and me and a friend of mine, we were filming each other, and you can see that episode actually on Skre's YouTube. And we had a huge storm system roll through, and it dumped, 8 or 9 inches of snow, starting early evening all through the night into the next morning. And that next day, we hunted in the afternoon, and the front had passed through, but it was still blowing like crazy, 25 mile an hour. And it had dropped like 30, it was like 30 degrees, something like that. And we hunted that afternoon, and Gio was able to kill a deer on film, but it was miserable. I mean, it was absolutely, I don't care what you buy. If you're not in a box stand and you're on the edge of a cornfield and it's 28 degrees and the wind's blowing 25 miles an hour, it's cold, period. So, he shoots the deer, and of course that warmed us up. Everything's okay in the end. But, to finish the story, the front passed on through. Well, the next morning, it's my turn to hunt. And he's filming. Well, the next morning, it is 1 degree.
Ooh.
Like 1, like the number 1. Not 2 degrees. It's 1 degree when we wake up. It's 5 degree at like an hour after sunrise. But there's zero wind. And wearing the same clothes, it's 23 degrees cooler on the thermometer, but the wind is none. There's no wind. Like, your steam is literally blowing straight up in the air. And don't get me wrong, it's cold to the touch. Everything's cold to the touch and whatnot, but it's much more tolerable because you don't have the wind. I don't know. I kind of chased a rabbit a little bit on the answer, but I'm going to tell somebody, look, if you're going to invest and you want to do layering system, if you wear one set, like Skre, with Skre as our example here, if you wear 170 base layers and then you wear 300 mid layers, man, that's a system that's very hard to beat. Everything else from there is just wind and moisture management on the outside, truthfully. You can wear that in a huge, wide range of temperatures as far as your mid layers. Now, you mentioned the Puffy Jacket, and so
that kind of borders on an outer as well,
So there's 2 different ways that the Puffy material is done, and we do it at Goose Down. 850 grams of Goose Down, and this is an entire hooded jacket that rolls up into a little stuff sack about the size of a football. And it weighs 16 ounces. And I'm telling you right now, it is one of the warmest jackets you'll ever put on your body. I don't care if you have a military-grade 3-in-1 waterfowl Alaska parka. This thing it's that warm, period. And it weighs 16 ounces. I mean, you can strap it to the outside of your backpack and never know it's there. I mean, it's the size and weight of a water bottle,
Oh yeah, there's no weight penalty.
Now, I will say this. A lot of people wear that jacket, and I've done this when it's really cold, and it's just amazing. A lot of people will wear that jacket underneath a like mid-weight shell-style jacket so that they get all of the insulation of that puffy down, and they get all that, and then they have the outer shell protection from the elements, wind, further wind, and all that kind of stuff. As a whitetail hunter in the South, I'm just going to break it down as simply as I can. If you take that jacket and you roll it up in this little stuff sack and throw it in your pack, that's basically all you need, period. Like, you can get you a mid and a lightweight base layer, a decent pair of pants, a nice hoodie, a nice midweight kind of top, and you throw that jacket, and you're just not going to be, with the exception of rain, there's just not going to be much else that happens that you can't slip that jacket on and finish your hunt. I mean, it's that good. And so, you're packing in a 16-ounce football, that doubles as a pillow if you want to take a nap.
Yeah, it's really the puffy jacket component of things was really a, oh man, I got to come up with a different phrase than game changer, but it really was for me because, dude, on cold or potentially cold evenings where a front's moving through or you think you might need it in the morning, wind's moving in, dude, after like December 1st, that thing just stays in my bag. I don't even take it out because it's not taking up any space. I don't know why I wouldn't just have it in there because there was one day that it rained a little bit on my way to the stand and I was freezing my butt off. My pants were fairly dry because the hard scrabble just, kind of sheds that water, but I had gotten wet and I took my base layer off, hung it in the tree next to me, and I just put that puffy on. And it was, don't get me wrong, I probably could have used a little more in there, but to dry off. But dude, I feel like it did the job. I think it feel like it saved that hunt.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you, and I will say that the Puffy Jacket was designed by Skre and the owners at Skre as a very extreme cold. The idea behind it was, what is something that can be like if we hike up on a mountain, in the backcountry, and we need to put something underneath our shell jacket that is an extreme protector against cold weather. But we need to make that very packable, very lightweight and all that. That's how it was designed. What they didn't realize when they ran into, going into the whitetail market, they didn't realize how great of a product they had for tree stand hunters. And this has been, what you just shared has been one of the most common feedbacks from whitetail hunters. I've got a bunch of people, friends and stuff that have bought gear from me through Skre, and they don't necessarily have the whole system, but they have that jacket because it's just, you're not going to wear it until it starts to cool off and get cooler weather. But again, it takes the place of so much bulk and weight. And it's, it's got the Teflon coating on it, so it does shield water, and it's got the lifetime warranty, and it's got all of those features. But it's just an amazing piece, and I really think it's probably it really is probably one of, if not the most widely recommended, or I guess let's put it this way, the best vote getter from what I've seen since Skre has gotten into the whitetail world. For if you had to buy one piece, which one would you get? Which one is, I guess, most useful? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go so far as to say if you can only get 3 pieces of gear, you need to get the Kaibab one, the 170 top and bottom, and you need to get the Puffy. You can probably make do with everything else you've got, but those 3 things right there will change your experience just an unbelievable amount.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. If you can find a way to take care of yourself, at your skin, and then you can find a way to reasonably and economically pack in that cold weather layer, and make it also not just that, but make it also kind of a versatile cold layer that you can wear when it's not super cold, but it really works when it is super cold. Then yeah, you're kind of hitting it. I guess what you're doing there when you say that, and I don't disagree with you. When you say that, what you're doing is you're bookending the whole
exactly
thing. And that's a good take. I mean, I would have to agree.
Yeah, for sure. Chase, I know that you are squirming to dive into the Midwestern aspect of this, so why don't you take that away?
Yeah, I mean, I have always kind of been wanting to build a system to go out to the Midwest because I'm going to take a trip every year out there and looking to maybe build a system to go out there. So, Locke, what type of system would you recommend that I build for a Southerner that is cold-natured to go out to the Midwest and have an enjoyable time?
Well, the salesperson in me tells you, Chase, that you need to go buy our ultimate bundle that is one of every piece we have, and then you will not be without, no matter what conditions.
Buy it all.
The ultimate bundle is everything you need. You could not possibly be missing anything.
Right.
And I do. I mean, I do. That is my hope. But realistically, I understand that that's probably and maybe not everybody's aspiration. So one of the things that we do is we do a lot. We do a lot of different bundles, and we have a Whitetail Bundle, and it covers you pretty well. But I think, outside of looking into the bundles, I think probably the next thing, the best way to look at it is you want to go 170 merino base layers and, any whatever merino base layers against the skin and something lightweight, because merino does a whole lot, and you can do a whole lot of things with your mid layers from anything that you choose to use, whether it's another piece of the Skre system or some other brand of clothing that you have. So to Walter's point, start off the lightweight next to skin, get a very high quality merino top and bottom. And then, beyond that, I think our hard scrabble is kind of our shell. And it's another one of those pieces that traditionally a lot of people look at it based off of their traditional hunting gear, and they think, well, this is not very heavy, right? Like, what is this going to do if it gets cold? Well, it's a shell, and so it blocks wind, it blocks moisture, and it allows your merino to do a lot of insulation. So it's kind of one of those things where it's tricky. It's lighter weight than what you would traditionally wear as a warmer outer layer. But the whole point here is we're not trying to bulk up on the outside. We're trying to insulate from the inside. So we have a quality outer layer that allows less bulky, higher performing base layers to do their job. So, you're looking at a top and bottom, and for Skre, that's our hard scrabble series. I personally am a huge fan of the vest. One of the things that I really hope that Skre will do in the very near future is we have a hard scrabble vest, and I hope that we come out with some sort of maybe the Puffy or some sort of fleece style heavier insulating vest, because I think it's very important when you're sitting in a tree stand. Not only does that vest keep a lot of things like your harness up underneath, but keeping your core warm is very important. So I think the vest is an important piece. And then, the next thing I would do from there is get the Puffy Jacket. If you can get the 170 merino with the hard scrabble top and bottom, the hard scrabble vest, and that Puffy Jacket, I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and get the mid-layer merino for that mid-layer, but you could wear any mid-layer with that right there. And, with the exception of just unseasonably brutal cold, that's going to be a system that carries you from the south all the way into, at least the middle of November type of temperatures that you typically get in the Midwest without a lot of problem. And it's going to do a whole lot for rain. Believe it or not, when it comes to performance gear, the DWR Teflon coating that you get on all performance gear is very, very, very durable in the rain. Like, it's not rain gear. None of these companies can market it as waterproof, but it is very, very good in the rain. I have sat in what most people, and including myself, I'm on the verge of, if it gets any worse, I'm going to have to either get rain gear or get out and leave, and actually kill deer, and came out and with nothing but with your shell jacket and pants. So that shell jacket and pants do great. And, they have the hip zippers, the pit zips for breathability. They do good when the temperature warms up. It's just a very versatile system. So, if you're kind of wanting to see some of this a little bit more laid out, you look at the Whitetail Bundle at skregear.com. It's got everything but the Puffy Jacket, and that's kind of always my go-to with people is say, hey, go look at the Whitetail Bundle, and if you want to add one more piece, add the Puffy Jacket, and you're with the exception of serious rain gear, you're pretty much covered right there.
And I'm going to make this real easy for everybody listening. I'm going to put the link for both of those in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to be like Chase and build myself an awesome Midwest and Southern whitetail setup, I'm gonna put all the links in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on your phone, just scroll through and you'll go right there. Make it super easy.
Yeah, and yeah, man, that would be great. And I encourage people to go out there and take a look at that and reach out, with Skre or myself or anybody that you run into that works for us, and I'm sure other companies as well. I mean, we're all hunters, and everybody's up for talking shop. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So just reach out if you got a question. I mean, there's very few of us that are adverse to talking about deer hunting and trying to share a little bit of something to answer a question to help somebody out.
Yeah, absolutely. Chase, did you have any other questions?
Does Skre sell gloves or socks, Locke?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. And for everybody listening, that was not prepared. That was not a prepared segue on my behalf. Chase just accidentally just showed off why he's such a good co-host for this podcast. So Skre has a glove right now that's really more of it's the kind of glove you would wear if you were backpacking up in the mountains while you're on the move. It's not one that's really all that great for tree stand sitting, but we are coming out this summer with a more of a liner style merino glove, a merino sock, a merino boxer, and also a lightweight jacket that would be kind of like in between lightweight and midweight, and just kind of like a 3/4 zip pullover jacket. That'll be a breathable, a great kind of, it's kind of a hybrid piece. It's probably not really a mid layer, but a great, if you don't really want to have to wear a mid or a heavier jacket, but you want something over the top of those mid layers, something like that, and great for just an over piece in warmer weather. So that's some of the new stuff that's coming out. To answer your question, we will have a merino glove, a merino sock, and a merino boxer, and that's some of the new stuff that's coming out this summer. And Skre is one of those companies that's kind of new to the market, so if you start following along, our goal is to outfit the hunter with a complete system. I joked about the ultimate bundle, but the idea is to offer you something that goes with everything else, so that there's never a situation that you'll legitimately find yourself in hunting that you won't have something to address it with. And so we'll be coming out with new stuff, year after year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I've been following you guys for quite some time, and I've watched that evolution of stuff, from the dropping the Nebo. I think it's called Nebo rain gear, right?
Yeah, Nebo is our rain gear. That's right.
Yeah, I've just watched you guys continuously roll stuff out, and I'm going to attest in the intro. I'm going to kind of tell everybody why I was willing to have you guys on, but it correlates directly from a week in the backcountry using the stuff, and beating it while elk hunting, and then using it for an entire deer season. It's quality stuff, and I encourage everybody who's listening to go take a look, click on the link in the show notes, and build yourself a system. But Locke, I know your time is precious right now. You're getting your boy to baseball practice, so I'm gonna let you go. I appreciate you coming on, man, for the third time. I think by the fourth time we're gonna have a title for you.
Hey, man, like I said, you can't call me anything I hadn't been called worse before. So I'm good with it, guys.
All right, Bubba. I appreciate you, dude.
Yep.
Yeah,
thanks.
man. Thank y'all.
All right, buddy.